Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Corinne Grant. I'm facilitating our discussion here this evening. I don't know how much you guys know about me. Perhaps you know I've been quite a vocal supporter of the ALP over the last few years. I've always been an ALP voter for 20 years. I'm not anymore. It's not possible to believe in a party that doesn't believe in what its core values used to be. It's got beyond that point now. And when Bill Shorten goes on 774 radio and describes people like me as faux humanitarians because we don't think that the PNG solution is much of a solution, it's time to find a new party to vote for. Adam, I might just start with you and ask, how are you going on the campaign trail? Feeling confident, feeling exhausted, ready to have a little lie down?
All of the above. It's going well. We've had people out making thousands, if not tens of thousands of contacts with voters and conversations, and there's probably two main things that I'm hearing. One is a lot of people have almost switched off and just can't believe that this is the standard of debate that's happening in what's meant to be, the high point of debate about visions about the country. Secondly, the issue that we're talking about tonight comes up a lot as well, and the range of responses go from people being sad to being disappointed to just being gutted to being angry. And a lot of people are just looking at this and shaking their heads and sometimes shaking their fists.
Julian, you have never publicly supported any political party before. You are coming out this campaign and publicly supporting the Greens. What is behind that motivation?
You're right, I've never publicly supported any party. This year is different because this year, for the first time in Australia's history, we have both major parties promising to outdo each other in cruelty to a group of human beings. And that is such a despicable position for the major parties to take that I think we need to speak against it. We need to identify what's going on and stand up for the only party who are not taking that same dismal position.
The Labor candidate for the seat of Melbourne described this, the PNG solution, as harsh, awful but necessary. How have we got to a point in Australia where we feel that we can justify such an extreme position?
You have to make a fundamental choice about when you're in politics about how you're going to try and persuade people to vote for you, because that's what everyone's in the business of doing. And what has happened is that at some point it was felt that there were more votes in playing to the worst in us than playing to the best in us. And in particular, it's been assumed that in certain outer suburban seats in New South Wales and Queensland, where it's been focus grouped to death, and they've come up with the idea that these are the kind of things that people want to hear. And so the whole of the national conversation has become focused around that, and it's become a competition as to who can be the toughest. And we've just completely lost the other option, which is to actually lead from the front by pointing out to people, actually every one of us is only 1 or 2 degrees removed from someone who came here from another country at some point. And that person, that individual in your life or in your family or in your workplace is actually a good person. And it would be quite easy to tell a really positive story about Australia's migration history, but instead it's easier probably to go down the fear route, and that's the route that it's gone down. And so Kevin Rudd continually engages in a battle to try and out-tough Tony Abbott, which is, I don't want to give Kevin Rudd any free advice, but my advice would be don't try and do that because there's nothing Tony Abbott won't do.
What the Coalition have recognised is that of course you can get votes by demonising asylum seekers, but how do you make it look respectable to mistreat a group of human beings? First of all, you've got to make them hated or feared. And they have deliberately and dishonestly set out for the last 12 or 13 years to demonise asylum seekers by calling them illegals, which is false, by calling them queue jumpers, which is false, by saying they're the sort of people who'd throw their children in the sea, which is false. Most recently, the chief flag waver for this recently has been Morrison, who said that if people are to be settled in the community, they shouldn't be accommodated near vulnerable people. The latest in the bidding war is to bring in the military. I mean, it's all directed at making the public fear and hate boat people. And by the way, Kate doesn't like me saying this, but I think it's quite important. The very first time that the word illegals was used as a noun instead of an adjective in reference to asylum seekers was in the 1930s in reference to Jews fleeing Germany. It's a despicable word with a horrible origin, and it's dishonest.
Is there any way, this has all been quite depressing, what can we do to change that discourse, the political discourse in particular, and what do we do when we're talking to people on the street about it? Is there anything we can do?
I think we have to humanise it again. I think, coming back to the point that Julian made, one of the most successful tactics has been to dehumanise these people. And I think if we start treating both people like people and start telling the stories of people who are here right now in our midst, who have fled persecution and come here and sought our assistance and are now living a better life, and we're living a better life because we've got them in our midst, I think it's important to tell that. And I mean, just Richmond, which has got a very big Vietnamese and former Vietnamese population, I mean, I think we need to be telling the point, no, we're not talking about abstract individuals. We're saying this person here would not have been accepted here in Australia, but they would have been sent to have lived indefinitely in Nauru or PNG. This is your neighbour. This is this person who runs this business on the street, or who works in this job, or who's at the university. And I think the more we can humanise it and find a way of saying this is actually about people, we can start to turn the wheel again.
I sort of agree with that, but I'm coming round to the view that as well as trying to humanise them, which will work for some proportion of the population, if we had a political leader, I mean, you'd need a political leader first, on that assumption or wish, try to humanise them, but also look at the economics of it, because economic arguments work quite well in Australia, interestingly. And it works out something like this. At the moment, our present approach to dealing with boat people costs us round about $300,000 to $400,000 per boat person per year to brutalise them, damage them, and finally destroy them if we can. My grand alternative plan is, first of all, you would detain them only initially for a month for preliminary health and security checks. I don't advocate open borders, that would be silly. After that, allow them into the community on a few conditions whilst their refugee status is still being determined. First condition, they're eligible for Centrelink and Medicare benefits. Second, they're allowed to work. Third, they must keep in contact with the department so they can't just disappear into the community. And fourth, during their refugee status determination, whether it's a year or 2 years, whatever, they have to live in specified country areas. Now, that would mean, even if you allow 50% add-on for overheads, administrative overheads, it would work out if all of them, if every single one of them remained on Centrelink benefits, it would cost us about $30,000 per person per year instead of $300,000. You'd liberate $2.5 billion a year. And you'd be reviving country towns who desperately need additional population. In fact, I think you'd find country towns competing with each other, saying, we want the next lot of boat people, please. It's our turn. Form a queue, please.
Our policy is essentially a version of that, and we asked the Independent Parliamentary Budget Office to cost what it costs on the one hand to have the system of offshore mandatory detention. This was even before the PNG proposal. I try not to call it a solution. I keep falling into the trap, but it's not. It's the system of mandatory detention that we've got in offshore processing versus saying to people, no, we'll process you in the community for a maximum of 30 days for health and security checks, and then you would have the kind of benefits that Julian was talking about. Didn't go the next step about country towns and so on, but they came back and said, if you did that and you increased the humanitarian intake to 30,000, so by about a third from what it is, over the next 3 and a bit years, you would save $3.2 billion. The country would save $3.2 billion. And I've just sat through a parliament where Labor and Liberal voted together to cut to kick single parents off their benefits
Yeah.
and onto the dole to save $750 million and then cut another $2 billion out of university funding. Now, I know what I'd rather, and I reckon I know what most people in the country would rather as well.
How do we work with our regional neighbours to find a regional solution? Because, I mean, this isn't something we can do on our own, and at the moment we seem to be acting like we're the John Wayne of the area and we'll tell every other country what to do, which I think they're politely starting to get jack of. How do we work?
We're actually more like the Ian McShane of the area. John Wayne was far too pleasant.
That's a Deadwood reference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, I was just trying to be really modern. We need to cooperate. We need to reflect the reality that arrival rates in Australia of boat people over the last 15 or 20 years have tracked parallel with international refugee movements. It's not like we are just a terribly pleasant country that people naturally want to come to. It's because more people are around and we will continue to get approximately the same percentage of them. And when the global movements increase, so the numbers coming here will increase. If we're serious about not wanting people to die at sea, then we would set up a fair income processing centre in Indonesia and perhaps another in Malaysia, process them there, but offer them quick resettlement. Refugee movements are not about processing, they're about resettlement. You can process them on the moon for all I care, as long as you resettle them swiftly. I think we could do that. But if we did that, we'd need to cooperate with Indonesia and Malaysia. We'd need to stop treating them with contempt. We would need to put a lot of money into their system because the burden will be borne by them in the first instance. We need to cooperate with other countries to take those who are resettled so that you have them processed in Indonesia and you say, okay, you will be resettled in 3.5 months or in 4.5 months, whatever it is. Don't even think about taking a people smuggler voyage because you'll likely drown. That's the way you save people from drowning at sea. Then you've got to get other countries willing to take some proportion of them, and you've got to do something to help Malaysia and Indonesia, who are carrying the burden of the fact that more people are likely to be drawn down the pipeline because they think they can get resettled swiftly. You know, at the moment, what the politicians fail to acknowledge is that the fact that we're surrounded by sea is a natural barrier. The fact that it's dangerous is a natural barrier. You get asylum seekers coming into Australia by aeroplane, those who are able to get travel documents from their government, and not all persecuting governments are willing to give travel documents to their persecuted minorities, strangely. So they can get travel documents and they get a visa to Australia, tourism, study, business, whatever it is. They come here and when they arrive, then they apply for asylum. They never go into detention centres. It's all easy and safe for them. Only about 20% of them succeed. Boat people, on the other hand, the ones who couldn't get travel documents, the ones who are forced to use the dangerous people smuggling path, 90% of them turn out to be fair income refugees. Why? Because the risk is a natural filter. It's the fair income ones who are actually the boat people.
Do you want to talk us through any more of your refugee policy, Adam? Because we haven't really discussed that tonight.
Look, much of what I've said, it's about providing people with safer pathways and having what properly could be looked at as a regional approach and not one that's based on standing up at press conferences and being hairy-chested and saying talking about it as a hardline approach as if that was a thing to be proud of, but that's where we're at. But saying, yeah, look, let's immediately lift our intake to 30,000, do what the Houston panel recommended, take 3,800 immediately from places in our region like Indonesia to start giving a sense, again, of hope that the system is moving and so it is worth waiting there. Do that and abolish mandatory detention and instead move to a system of community processing, and you don't just save money but you save lives.
Yeah. Thank you very much to Julian Burnside and Adam Bance for coming along tonight as well and sharing all of their information. And get out there, tell people about the importance of getting Adam re-elected, the importance of having some balance in our parliament, and the importance of having people in there who can moderate the extremes of the two major parties. All the very best, Adam.
Thank you, and please thank Corinne as well for coming.